But today we're going to talk about commitments. Are you guys comfortable with commitments? You not familiar with them?
Do y'all know how to read it?
Anything about them?
Familiar, but you're
All of the above.
Okay. As long as they don't scare you, we're fine. So, okay, we have 3 packets in the folder that Laura gave out. Everybody got a folder? Let's start there. Okay, we have 3 commitments in there. So we're going to start with the perfect commitment. Well, actually, we'll go. How do you? Not really. I can start with like a little brief history. So we'll start with where title insurance came from, and it's important. So this dates back to the 1800s, and it's from a Latin term that means buyer beware. And so it's basically to make sure that the buyer is getting clear title when they go to buy a home. And that's why in Texas we typically have the seller issue it, because it's the seller's good faith to say, hey, I'm giving you, a clean title once you're buying my home. So the examination process, all that's behind the scenes. We just literally run a history from the date that the oldest date known from the property. And we call that the chain of title up until the current date. So with the chain of title, it'll tell us when the owner switched, how the owner switched, dates. You moved?
No, it's the same thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so before issuing a policy, we just have to make sure we take all the steps to make sure that title is clear. So we can go to the perfect commitment, flip the page, and this is a depiction of an actual title commitment. So the top part is always going to show you the insurance portion. So it's letting you know the policy amount, which is basically the sales price, and then the loan amount, and it's letting you know who is being insured. So in that portion, you're always going to see the buyer, and you're always going to, if there's a lender, you'll see the lender. So there's loan policy and then Texas owner insurance, but that is just the information about the buyers and the lender. And the second part, number 3, you'll see the vested owner, and that's just the person who currently is in title. Just a tidbit, that does not always match what's on HCAD. So if you can honestly go change HCAD at any point, like to say that you want to pay the taxes, that does not mean that you're the owner of the property. So Schedule A always shows you the owner. It also shows you the legal description. So in title, we don't insure property addresses, we insure legal description. And I don't know if you probably work with some builders at some point, but when they go like replat a property and stuff, so it might have started off as like 8100 Sampson Road, they can go change it at any point to call it 2900 Sampson. Well, it has to be the block. But anyways, you can change the name of the street. Point is, you can never change the legal description. So the legal description is always the same. Anything you want to add?
I would just say, as far as record title, I always just want to make sure and you cross-reference that with who you're actually speaking to, because I know there's a lot of fraud that's going on right now. And so if you're speaking to someone that you've never actually met in person, because it's actually happened to an agent friend of mine, where she thought she was communicating with the actual owner, and then when we started doing a little bit more research, come to find out that it wasn't who was actually entitled. So you always want to make sure that what's entitled, even if you open title early as a TBD to be determined as far as the buyer, we can see who's entitled. So you're always going to want to make sure that who is in this bottom portion, number 3, is going to match what's on your contract as the seller.
So then if we flip on the back side, we have Schedule B. That's always where you're going to see your exceptions. So title is saying that we're going to insure everything except for all of these items. In this section, you'll see things that we know about. So if there's like an encroachment, if there's like an HOA that has a lien position and stuff, you'll see that in the exemptions. Especially, you can always look at this for the survey. So if we know that the fence doesn't follow the property line, or again, there's an encroachment, or shared owners agreements or anything, we're going to take exception to that, because that could be a problem down the line, but we know about that, so we're not going to issue title insurance on that.
And just to kind of piggyback off of that one too, I actually recently closed a transaction where we did get a survey. There was a 25-foot setback line that was a restriction, HOA restriction, and it wasn't showing on the existing survey, but it was required to be put on the new survey. And so this was about almost 2 weeks of me going back and forth with each one of our underwriters, the sellers, and everything too. So come to find out, long story short, the HOA filed a restriction that they did not do properly. They did not specify a section. They did not specify anything. So essentially, it did affect the sellers. It did affect the survey, and the buyers were questioning it because what they were planning to do in the future, the garage portion of that particular property was over the 25-foot setback line. Even though they went to the city and got all the city permits, even though the HOA gave permission, we still took exception to that because that is something that is recorded a record. It was it wasn't from the HOA, and we took exception to that, which means that we wouldn't cover it. I try to go to it because I know that's what the clients want. The sellers were very worried because it was a contingency property, so they had to sell their property in order for them to purchase. And so they just wanted to make sure that the buyers were comfortable, and they were getting the survey endorsement, which is great, but because it is an existing matter, it still was not going to be covered. So you always want to make sure that you review those restrictions and you compare it to what's on your survey and look at those easements and those encroachments on your survey and cross-reference it with your restrictions to kind of make sure that what your clients plan to do in the future with that property, they can do that.
And if you look on page 3, 10E actually is speaking directly to the survey. And so you see it says the fence along the east and property line, it's off the property line, so they're not going to insure that. That fence is being excluded from that coverage from the property line. So did anybody have any questions about exceptions at Schedule B?
Or has anybody had any issues with any of their transactions?
Where their exception came into play and that wasn't covered? No? Okay, well, that's a good thing.
No.
Go ahead.
I had a situation with a piece of land I bought. It was recorded as commercial, right? I built a house on it.
The restrictions say
Nobody caught it. Not the builder, not the title company, no. And
but was it in the restrictions that you could only build residential?
well, I was building residential
Oh, but it was
in a commercial lot.
okay.
But
Okay.
I didn't know that was a commercial lot. It was in a neighborhood.
But did the title company send you the restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, the title didn't want to cover it because it was like you said. Like
It was part of the
Yeah.
exceptions, yeah. Because they listed out those restrictions in the exceptions. So we send it to you guys. We'll read it if you ask us to look for something specific.
Yeah.
But most times we don't go through those because that could sometimes be, 20
Essentially,
documents.
Yeah, we don't know what your plans are for the future.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where we provide you the information. And so I did have an agent reach out to me and it's like, hey, I just want to make sure that we're good. We can't really sit there and really specify what you can and cannot do with the property.
Yeah.
My response to that is always, you have to make sure you seek out legal counsel so that
Yeah.
it fits with your plans on what you plan to do with the future. So we can provide you the information, and if you have, maybe a little bit more specific questions when it comes to your situation, but we can't actually sit there and say, yes, you can, because we're not counsel. You would have to go to, it's kind of put you in a situation.
Commercial.
Well, what came from it?
No, there is an empty lot. It was an empty lot,
But nobody bothered you?
And the thing is that the city caught it after the house was built. So we were contacted by them, and they're like, either you build a pond, a pond or replot.
Interesting. Okay.
So I had to do the replotting. It was like $7,000.
Yeah.
And I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
We're still like trying to figure it out.
Trying to get through it, through the legalities of it.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's always good to make sure you reach
Read
out
the
to the city
instructions.
permits too, like the
Yeah.
city permit. Yeah, just to be on the safe side. If that is the ultimate goal of you wanting to
I
build.
figured like the builder would have caught it or somebody. Nobody did.
Yeah. The builder
They let me build to the end. So everything was done. And then they
caught it, yeah. It's and you were the buyer though, and you contracted the builder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think essentially it would, and I hate to say that, it would fall on you. Yeah, to really review those restrictions to make sure that it
Yeah,
fits
you want more?
your goal.
Oh.
I would like to take
Well, no, I think
It's one of those.
no, I
tricky
think she gave out
situations.
some.
Okay, so
Yeah,
then
she
for
did. I
the
see.
reach out to counsel, just to be on the safe
No.
side, so that you're safe on the back end, because now you're having to deal with trying to correct everything, now.
Yeah, but that's a huge thing in
You gotta let us
exceptions.
know how that works out. Let's see if it works out in your favor. Are you building that
Well,
pond?
I already repotted.
Repotted,
Okay. Okay. Another one to look at on this exceptions is F, right under the survey information, but it's just letting you know that this is where you'll see if surveys are approved or not. So, and you also see it on Schedule C, but you can always look to this to know if the survey is good. Okay, well, now Schedule C. This is where you see all of your problems. So on this one, it's showing no voluntary liens, and that's also considered a great title commitment. But even if you see a deed of trust, that is also a typical title commitment that we're used to. You just get that paid off at closing. And then all of these other things are standard information. Number 8, again, shows you that the survey was approved. No, it's on Schedule B. That's more so for the lender to see that they can issue the survey coverage. And then this one is just showing that there's no issues with the survey. You don't have to necessarily, you want to go through Schedule D? I don't think it's necessary. Yeah. Okay, so these other two, the train wreck and death,
This is the
divorce,
nice
and
one.
judgment. Yeah.
This is the good one. This is what you want to see.
Also with the mortgage, fine. We can do train wreck. We can go to train wreck
Go
next.
to the train wreck one.
Because this is train wreck. I mean, this is still the same. Death, probate.
Yeah. Kind of.
You want to start this off? You start. Thank you. You're so good at this. All right, so again, we're going to start with Schedule A, and this is just showing you the insured information. But when you look at number 3, if you see 2 names vested in title, but then you see subject to Schedule C requirements, that shows you that there is more information needed. So that could be a number of things, but we'll say, what does this say?
This one says we find a record of deed. So if you flip now to Schedule C, it's where it's going to give you the additional information that we're going to need to clear title based off of what's showing on Schedule A, and that's your vested owners. So this can be a number of things. This can be, maybe there's a break in the chain of title, maybe there is a death, maybe, there is a quitclaim deed that is filed a record that it's putting a break in the chain of title. So this is where it's going to give us additional information as to what it is that we're going to need in order for us to clear title. And so in this case, for example, it just says we find a recorded deed in which the subject property was conveyed to home SFR borrower, under this deed that was filed a record. And so it doesn't show that the property is in the owner's name, it actually shows it in someone else's name. And so it's gonna, I'm sorry. So it's gonna say that we're gonna need we're gonna have to kind of dig deeper as to what's going on in order for us to make sure that your owners are who they say that they are.
Okay, and then we can go back to number 7. So it says we find various liens and judgments against the recorded of record against the persons with similar names. So typically we'll see this with more common names. So if there's like Michael Johnson, we're going to see that pop up because there's probably 30 judgments in Harris County for Michael Johnson. So we'll request a statement of information from the seller, and that's just going to give us information to help us rule out some of those judgments. Now, if there's somebody with a more specific name like Jasmine Smith, most likely that's me and that's your seller, and your seller has a judgment that we're going to have to clear up. And then again, that deed issue. So there could be a number of reasons that the deed was messed up, but this looks like it was maybe a deed didn't get recorded, maybe the person, they went and recorded a fraudulent deed. And sometimes we will flag, like, so say you as the builder went to build, and then a year later you go sell to another buyer. we might flag that if that didn't have title insurance and say we don't know if this is a real thing, and we might request that you come back and sign that deed over. Like there's, we always have to make sure if there's no title insurance involved, it raises our red flag, and we want to make sure that this was actually a insurable transaction, so that when you go do this new transaction, that one is insurable.
And as far as like various liens that pop up against your sellers, they can be anything. They can be child support liens, they can be abstracted judgments, they can be federal tax liens, state tax, Texas workforce, abstracted judgments. I had one where, because we will rerun title right before closing. And I had one a while back where when we did that, it was a new construction. Well, the lumber company didn't get paid. And they filed a $40,000 lien against, or $50,000 lien against the property about a week before closing, and we ran title probably about 3 days before closing again. And it delayed it. It pretty much delayed it because the partner, I guess, didn't settle the bill, and he was trying to negotiate, and it was the whole thing back and forth. And essentially, the lumber company came in. He's like, "This is the payoff. This is what it is." And then the seller was like, "But I'm gonna send you my invoice," and I'm like, "Sir, I can't go off of your invoice. I have to go off of the actual lumber company's invoice because they are the mechanics. They're the ones that filed the lien, and I need to get the release of lien from them." And so it had to be settled out at what it is that they gave me, and he was not happy about it. I was like, "You can either close it or I can hold it." Like, it's one of those things where I won't close it until I get some type of an agreement between parties. And he's like, "I'll deal with it afterwards." Yes, ma'am.
I had something similar to that. I had a client who was selling his house, and he didn't know that he had a lien for Ford's, like pickup trucks under his name. And so he found out that his close friend went to Ford and bought 2 Fords with his name.
Oh no.
And so now he's like in a lawsuit with Ford
And him. Oh,
God's
that's
Lord, yeah.
horrible. Did y'all close or did
We
y'all
were able to close because Ford sent a
like a release?
like a release lien.
Yeah. Okay.
Was he the buyer or the seller?
He was a seller.
Okay. I wanted to point out buyers can have judgments too that prevent you from closing. Yeah. So there's certain ones, and most of the time with that's going to be a lender that makes you. So if a buyer's in any form of bankruptcy or anything, that will pop up. And we will know that, and then we'll have to get their attorneys involved, and we'll have to go through the proper channels of that. But I also have a deal right now where there's an IRS lien against the buyer that the lender is requiring them to pay. We're not requiring them to pay that, but the lender is requiring them to pay that before they will loan them the money.
I
So,
had one of those too recently. That and then what was it? I forgot the other one. I totally slipped my mind, but yeah, you see a lot of different types of liens in title. You see loyalty liens. You have to pay your spouse out at closing. If you get a divorce, you're selling the property now. You have to pay your ex-spouse out. She's gonna have to come in and sign a release of lien for that. So, it can be a number of things. And HOA liens are another big one. City of Houston liens, Pasadena. I've had Pasadena, City of Houston. So, you always want to make sure, even if you aren't the seller's agent, but as the buyer's agent, you want to make sure that those are cleared up for your client as well, because you don't want them to have any problems or any issues once they get into the property later on.
So I have a question, because I have a buyer under contract. We were supposed to close the beginning of February. This house, I think that the houses have probate. I don't know if they did the paperwork before, but she listed it and we got it under contract. And the only information they've given us is like they're still going through the process, the attorney's still asking for paperwork. Do you guys know how long that would take?
It takes probably around 2-3 months.
well, it depends on how it is, but let's switch to this one now.
That's the
Yeah,
probate one.
so let's switch to this death, divorce, and judgments. Okay, well, if we start back at Schedule A, you'll see that same language for, the other commitment with this commitment, and it says subject to the requirements in Schedule C. And if you flip back to Schedule C, this one right there. You'll see abstracts of judgment, which are just liens. And then if you look at number 9, you'll see that pending probate proceedings. Okay, so that means somebody went in there and they started the proceedings. So if their grandmother died, and let's just say like one of the grandkids goes and starts the probate proceedings, but then your client is another grandkid that says, I can do an heirship affidavit. You don't know this up front. You don't know that somebody else has started a probate process. So you're going to come to title. We're going to see that. We're going to switch here, and then we're going to know somebody's already opened that probate. We're not going to be able to do anything with anything until that probate is done. And so if your client is not actually is not the one that's doing the proceedings, then that just throws a huge monkey wrench in there. So if you know that there's somebody dead, I would get title open ASAP. Even if, like before you put it on the market, I would know if.
So I'm the buyer's agent.
Oh, okay. They
And
don't
it's
have
funny,
title open.
With that property, the land, they're asking for like a septic tank information, because it has a septic tank. Well, nobody knows, because the owner died.
Yeah.
So the family members don't know. So it's like all of these delays, I had to amend it to close towards the end of this month, hoping that we'll have everything, because by now, the only thing we're missing is just to have the clear title.
Okay.
Which would be from the probate proceedings. Do you know when they started?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably can look it up on
Your-
the county
yeah.
clerk's office.
The title company should provide you with, could at least give
They
you,
haven't really said anything.
maybe just ask for a date when it started and then where they are with the attorney. If they're waiting on one more document, because when there's probate, there's specific things that we look for in probate, which an attorney files on every single probate file. So if they're missing like the estate tax, affidavit, they should be able to tell you that's our last thing that we're pending from the attorney. So you just maybe be very specific, like what exactly are you still pending from the probate? And if they say they don't have anything, I don't know if that would be, or if they say that this just, how long have you been under contract?
Shoot, since the beginning of January.
No, it should, I mean, if it was done back then before, or like right when they got when you got under contract, then I mean, they should have something by now.
Yeah.
For sure.
She probably should have opened title before.
Mhm.
Even
That's
putting
what
it
I
on the
had
market.
never been in this situation
Yeah.
before. And I've been the listing agent, when it's been a probate, but
Yeah.
I don't know, but this particular one,
On
she
the-
should have opened
She
all
opened
the.
Yeah.
She's a newer agent.
Yeah. Well, I have.
They want the house.
They're
don't mind
willing
waiting.
to wait.
They're like,
Yeah.
I would just get the information about like when the probate proceeding started, and then like how long or what they're waiting on exactly, and then that'll give you an idea. But I did have a file with I opened title for one of my clients before he put it on the market. We knew there was a dead person in title. We were anticipating doing an heirship affidavit. We did, when he finally got the contract about a month later, we ran a bring to date, which just, bringing it up to date to make sure, see if anything else came about. But then we get a pop-up for pending probate proceedings. And so I start digging a little bit. I call the attorney. The person who's dead is married to his new wife, but his ex-wife went and filed the probate documents on him. How? I don't know. Harris County doesn't check. They don't care. They're just going to do it if you said that it's a thing. So now you have to go through the legalities of making sure, that the Harris County will approve the ex-wife to do it while he's currently married with his new wife. So that one's not closing anytime soon. So the contract fell through because that's going to take forever. They're both going to have to get attorneys involved. They're both going to have to dispute, who thinks they're owed what of his estate. So that's why I would want to know a little bit more, because that's a general blanket, pending probate proceeding, who's asking for this. Yeah.
I have one, speaking of that, she's talking about probates, but I've been working on ladybird deeds. Let's kind of touch base on ladybird deeds. I have a file where mom did file a ladybird deed, and everything was going to her 5 kids, where one of her kids passed away prior to mom. She never updated the ladybird deed, so essentially that interest still goes to the son. Well, son passed away prior. 2 more of her kids passed away. That's 3 affidavits of heirships right there that we have to do. From those 3 affidavits of heirships that we're doing now, they had heirs, and a couple of their heirs have passed away. So I'm about 7 affidavit of heirships deep in this right now. And I know she's getting a little frustrated because we've been working on this for about 4 months now. And so I'm like, I'm sorry, like, we have to still go through the proper steps to make sure that everything is cleared. And so and then it just trickled down from the event of mom really didn't update the Lady Bird deed prior to her death, knowing that her son passed away, having to pick up those extra affidavit of heirships too. So that's another way for us to clear title, is going that route. But just know that if that is the route that they do want to go, it's gonna take some time.
Do y'all know what an airship affidavit is? Okay. You don't?
Yeah, she does.
Okay. So an airship affidavit is basically, it's in lieu of the probate. So that means that they didn't have a will and they didn't go through the courts to get it done. So we have a form that's basically, it's like an affiant will sign and say, like, I knew this person and I'm attesting to this information and this is who these heirs are. And then you'll have to have 2 uninterested witnesses to say, I attest to this information. They have to know him for like 10 plus years. So if it's like, I don't like using like close family members, but if it's like your great great grandma and it's like your aunt knew your great grandma, she could be the person that says, I knew this information about, you know, my grandmother. And then it'll have to be 2 people who knew the great great grandma for 10 years plus to say all of that information is true. So that just takes away you having to go through court. Yeah. Yeah. You can, yeah.
Well, Lady Bird deed essentially is, you know, they're here, they're alive, they're well, but when they pass, the property goes to the people that she essentially signed the deed to, the interest of the home to. And so it's kind of like, I guess.
It's not a transfer on death deed, but it's different because it's just like me saying, hey, I want her to have my property. I'm not saying when I die, I'm just saying, hey, I want her to have my property. And then it goes to her. But then when I'm dead, it's still like you have to deal with me being dead. On transfer of death deed, I know that I want to only give this person when I'm dead, but then there's title stipulations to transfer on death deeds too, because some underwriters will make you wait 6 months and it just doesn't automatically transfer to that person. They still have to make sure this person doesn't have like millions of dollars of debt out there that, you know, that a state could pay off. And so those are 2 different type of things that do the same exact thing. They put the other person into title when you die.
We offer classes for that too. I know we just had one, so I don't know when our next one is going to be for like the estate planning and yeah. So I know we have classes for that. We just recently had one last week, so I'm sure we'll end up having another one, you know, in the next couple of weeks.
Once a year, but if we find that there's interest, then we will schedule another one.
It's good information.
Yeah, so also on this, if you look on Schedule 10, it says that, you know, that it speaks of the estate of the dead person because they'll know that the person is deceased. And then it wants you to submit all of the probate documents. So again, that's something that a probate attorney that the seller was working with will already have. They're all the same documents and they know what type of documents to file depending on the type of estate that it is. And so the biggest first step would be to get the title company in contact with the attorney, and that would eliminate a lot of like legwork and a lot of questions of you guys being the middleman. Number 8 is actually the divorce. Okay.
I think a big misconception or a lot of kickback that we get is if someone bought the property while they were single and then they're married, or they're married and divorced and then they still have the property. It's like, well, you know, I bought this property while I was single, this is mine. I get that, you know, but if they lived in that property, if that was their homestead, Texas is the community state, that spouse is gonna have to sign the deed or sign something in order for us to take her interest out of title. You know, and that is a big kickback that we get from sellers because, you know, a lot of people, you know, they buy a property while they're single, they get married, that marriage doesn't work out, they get divorced. Maybe it's in the divorce decree, but they still have to sign something in order for us to clear that individual out of title, especially if it's their homestead. If it is in the divorce decree and it specifies it in there, we can also go the route of recording the divorce decree with the real property records to remove that individual off of title. There's also loyalty liens where they have to pay the spouse out at closing, and then they'll come in, they'll swap a check for a deed, and that way we can, you know, take them out of vesting too. So that's another
But most of the
one.
time with when there's a divorce in title, even if there's a divorce decree, we're gonna request that the other spouse that is no longer in title technically sign a special warranty deed to officially get their information out. Because if you record that divorce decree, all your business is public record. Everybody will know what you had. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying we'll have to record your personal
So what
information.
if there's not a divorce decree and it's
Thank you.
It's like a verbal agreement, I know those are null and void or whatever, but what would need to take place if they don't wanna go through the whole divorce process?
They'd have to just sell it together. It'd be like a normal sale. Both of them would have to agree to sign.
And kind of like a title escrow?
Yeah, we just conduct it like a real closing. So if they're like in the process of getting a divorce, they can still close. They just have to both be in agreement to how much money they're gonna walk away with, and then they both have to be willing to sign out of their interest out of the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my God, excuse me. Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions about anything? Divorce, the commitment, judgments? No? Y'all good?
No?
Alright. I mean, that's pretty much like the gist of it. You know, every commitment is gonna look different, every commitment is gonna be different. You know, if y'all are at closing at another title company and you have any questions, feel free to give us
Excuse
a call
me.
and we'll help you, we'll walk you through it, kind of go over it with you. If you know, if you're the buyer closing on the other side and, you know, you have questions, like you had questions in regards to your commitment with your probate, you know, send it over to us. We'll be more than happy to take a look at it for y'all to kind of see what's on there, what's showing. And, you know, I've had other agents do that too, and I'll tell them like, hey, ask for this,
Yeah.
ask for this restriction, or ask for this document, you know, and kind of get them moving, you know, and get the other title company moving and getting over the supporting documents that are
Do you guys
currently on
ever
there.
do special requests like champagne for the client?
Yes.
I'm huge on my client's experience at closing.
Yes.
We give them bottles.
And I've had really crappy because they don't do anything. But it's just, that's their very last impression.
No,
Yes,
yes.
So I wanna
yes.
make sure they have.
We
Yes.
give them a bottle
Give
of
them a bottle
champagne.
at the end.
We do give them a bottle of
They can work
champagne. Yes, ma'am. And I think the end of the month, we had like muffins, fruit, strawberries all out there. They loved it. Yeah, it was really
It's
good.
just, it really stands out to them.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that have customers before and they're like, oh my gosh, you guys do all of this. You
All
know,
of
it's
this,
just like,
yeah.
it's an impact.
Yes.
Did you all go over the perfect commitment?
Yes. Yeah, we started with that one.
With that one, and then we went to the horror stories. Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I think once you start seeing them more and more, you'll start kind of recognizing the language that's in there. You know, a lot of the things in here we address at closing too, like the affidavit as to debts and liens. We have them sign that at closing, and that's just them attesting that they say that, you know, what we're paying off or what we're finding on title is what it is, and, you know, and in the event that something comes back, there's an affidavit showing otherwise, and, you know, and if they lied. I had a seller lie and say that the abstract of judgment was not hers, and it was a credit card. Come to find out it was, and when I caught her in the lie, she was stunned, and I was like, we're gonna have to pay this off, and she's like, okay, I understand.
Oh, people. I love
Can
people.
you guys go over what they need to look for when they're looking at a title commitment?
Yeah.
What's the most important things that they need to pay attention to?
Schedule A and Schedule C. So always make sure Schedule A is the person that you're communicating with that you know is selling the property. Schedule C, you always want to, like I said, a mortgage, deed of trust, that's typical. That's nothing to be alarmed about. That's just a normal payoff. Sometimes there are going to be two deed of trust on there, and that's typical. And then... But it's when you start to see like deceased people, when you start to see additional judgments that you don't know about, that's when those become alarmed. Divorce decrees, we'll always, you know, make sure that it's caught. But if you want to talk to your clients about that up front, if they're not legally divorced, to make sure that they're all both on the same page, and that they're willing to sign, and that they have the amount of money that they want to walk away with. Because sometimes that can get tense at closing too. If that's not already taken care of up front, that can get pretty tense at closing. And also when she was talking about some of this, a lot of this stuff in here is standard language, but on Schedule C, you're always going to see the affidavits of debts and liens, and you're also always going to see the marital status. So that's a form that we get signed at closing as well, and that's just saying this person is attesting on the day of closing that either they've been married and stayed married, they've gotten married, or they've gotten a divorce. So that one also lets us know a lot about the interest, and like she was saying with the deeds and the transfers. If you've gotten married and divorced at some point when you own that home, that other person either needs to sign the non-homestead affidavit, or they're going to have to sign out their interest if they actually live there.
Even multiple marriages. I think I had a guy who was married, divorced twice, the same property. I had another little lady. She was married and divorced 4 times. She was
Since
older.
owning.
She was older, so she was married and divorced about 4 times, and she had to outline all her divorces in that marital status affidavit because we have to make sure that we address every spouse that has ever been in that property as well.
Yeah. Just in case anybody wants to come back and say you didn't give me my ownership, we have to be able to pinpoint when they were married and how they no longer. You have a question? Oh. Go ahead. No, ask. We were.
So what if the person lied initially that he was technically not married, he is married? What happens in that case?
That would be more of like just say like the wife found out that he lied, or ex-wife found out that he lied and said he was never married, and she tried to go file a claim against him with the title company. Right, that most likely would be denied because he lied, but she could go to court and sue him, and she has like fraudulent paperwork that we're going to be willing to provide because all of those are notarized and those are they have legal standing, those documents. So when they're lying, it's not just signing a piece of paper.
So we will be, we will
Be on the stand saying he told me he wasn't married.
pass over documents if we are subpoenaed in anything, in any type of real estate transaction. So it's a big, conversation to have with the clients because, it's good to know everything up front. Once you kind of get into that listing agreement or into that buyer's agreement to confirm, what's going on. We've had buyers, I think one of our other closers had a buyer say that he was married, but they weren't legally married, but they were legally married. It was a whole back and forth thing, and we finally had to be like, okay, are you legally married or not? Like, not just move in together, common law. Like, is there a piece of paper saying that you are legally married? No. I was like, okay, that's the answer that we.
So is there a difference, as you mentioned, about living in the property and not living in the property? Is there a difference?
Yes. Yeah, because if it's your homestead, you're automatically, and you're married, you're automatically have 50% interest. If it's not, and they could consider it sole and separate property. So if your husband bought a property before you and you guys just rent it out, that's not considered your homestead. But you guys go buy a house together and you both live in it, that's considered your homestead property, and you're automatically entitled to the 50% of that property. His other property that he bought sole and separate, you still have to sign out on it saying, I never lived in this property. Yeah, and that's the protection for the title, to make sure like you won't come back in 20 years and say, oh, well, they didn't pay me out on my interest and I never signed out of my interest, but you did sign out by saying I never lived there.